All right, now it's time for the top 5 most disappointing teams of 2023. These are the teams that did not meet expectations. People said that these teams were going to make the playoffs or be really good this year, and then they ended up not doing that. So let's get into the list. My number 5 most disappointing team of 2023 is the New York Jets. Now, during the offseason, the Jets acquired Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers, and everybody thought, "Oh my God, that's going to be so good. They finally have a great quarterback that can win them some games. He has great receivers. He could throw it to Garrett Wilson. Other receivers that he has, Brees Hall's coming back for them. They have Sauce Gardner and Quinn Williams on defense. That could be really good." And then not even 5 minutes into their first game, Aaron Rodgers tears his Achilles and he's out for the season. And so the Jets fans had to go back with Zach Wilson, and obviously they did not perform. The Jets finished 7-10, which is what the Jets record was last year in 2022. But there is why they're on the list because everybody expected the Jets to make the playoffs, and they did not do that. And mainly that was because of Aaron Rodgers getting hurt, which that is a common theme. That was an extremely common theme with a lot of teams this year. Quarterback that they started the season ended up not finishing the year because of an injury. But now, the number 4 most surprising team of the 2023 season was the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Seattle made the playoffs last year. They were the 7th seed. I think they went 9-8 last year, or maybe 10-7. I can't. It was one of the two. And this year, everybody thought the Seahawks were going to be better. Geno Smith, now the Seahawks were actually on my top 5 most surprising teams of 2022 because everybody thought the Seahawks were going to be one of the worst teams of 2022. They ended up making the playoffs. Now, and the Buccaneers were in that situation this year. Now everybody thought the Seahawks were going to be a better team this year. They could maybe compete with the 49ers for the NFC West. I thought the Seahawks weren't going to win the NFC West. The 49ers are just too good. But the Seahawks would be a wild card team. They ended up not even making the playoffs. They had a winning record. They went 9-8, but they didn't make the playoffs. And I thought the Seahawks would have been a better team, honestly. Seattle had that stretch in September and October where they looked really good. The Seahawks were actually winning the NFC West at one point in this season, but after that they just completely fell off and just kept losing games, and then that was it for the Seahawks. And after this season, the Seahawks fired head coach Pete Carroll. So we'll see who Seattle goes with as their next head coach. As of right now, we don't know who their next head coach is going to be. But Seattle, obviously, my opinion, was a very disappointing team. I thought they would have been like an 11-win team this year. And wild card team, nope, they couldn't even do that. And they almost lost to the Cardinals in Week 18. But the Cardinals missed the game-tying field goal, the game-winning field goal. I can't remember which one it was. But now we'll move on to the number 3 most disappointing team of 2023, which is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, if you go back to mid-season, it did not look like the Jaguars were going to be on this list. The Jaguars started the season 8-3. They looked really good. They kept winning games, and they looked like, Jaguars are going to win this division. They're competing for the 1 seed in the AFC. But after their 8-3 start, it just fell apart. They just could not win games. After their 8-3 start, they only won 1 game for the remainder of the season to finish 9-8, and they missed the playoffs. And then that Week 18 game, it's you win and you're in. You win, you're in. You win your division, but if you lose, you miss the playoffs. And they couldn't even beat the 5-11 Titans. And granted, Trevor Lawrence did get hurt this year, but he wasn't out for the whole season. He got hurt for a bit, but he ended up coming back, and you could tell he wasn't fully 100% because of that injury he suffered in Cincinnati. But at that point, Jacksonville was still falling off. And the fact that you go 8-3, you start 8-3, and then you only win one of your next one of your next 6 games, yeah, it's not ideal. One of your next 7 games. But Jacksonville was my pick to win the AFC South this year. They finished second place. They couldn't do it. Houston ended up doing it. So now we'll move on to the number 2 most disappointing team of 2022, and it's the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the Bengals the last 2 seasons has been a really good team. They made the AFC Championship game 2 years in a row in 2021, 2022. They won the AFC in 2021. They made it to the Super Bowl, but they fell short against the Rams. And then last year, they fell short in the AFC Championship game. This year, they didn't even make the playoffs. They went 9-8, and they finished. I had the Bengals winning the AFC North. They actually ended up finishing last. They had a winning record, but they finished last place at 9-8. Now, granted, Joe Burrow suffered a season-ending injury with his wrist, and he had a torn ligament in his wrist or something like that, and he could not finish the season. But the Bengals were still winning games with Jake Browning after that, but then they just fell short at the end. And even when Joe Burrow was playing, the Bengals did not look great. The Bengals did not look like their dominant self in the past 2 years, and honestly, everybody thought Bengals would make the playoffs. The Bengals would win the division. They go 9-8, finish last, and you could say, well, the Bengals lost Joe Burrow halfway through. The Bengals did not look good. Did not look great even when Joe Burrow was playing. And now, granted, Joe Burrow did suffer an injury during training camp in the summer, so that could have a thing with it. Joe Burrow was pretty hurt a whole year, but the Bengals team in general did not step up in 2023. The Bengals were not a good team. I mean, the Steelers swept them for God's sakes. And but now we'll go on to my number 1 most surprising team of 2023, and this might be a surprising pick for some of you, but I have the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Chargers were a playoff team last year. They went 10-7, or maybe they went 11-6. I can't remember which. And everybody said Brandon Staley is a terrible coach, and I agree. Brandon Staley is terrible, but they were still winning games with him, and they made the playoffs last year. They ended up blowing that 27-0 lead in the wild card. But now we go to 2023. You got all these players, Justin Herbert, and then the Chargers started 1-2, and then they kept losing games. I think they were 5-6 at one point, and then the Chargers finished 5-12. They were one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. Now, yes, Justin Herbert did suffer a season-ending injury at the beginning of December, but the Chargers were really bad even when Herbert was playing. And then, of course, you have that infamous Thursday night game against the Raiders. The Chargers were down 63-7 at one point. They would score 2 garbage time touchdowns to lose 63-21, and what would end up being Brandon Staley's last game for the Chargers. They fired him after that year. But the Chargers they hired Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh yesterday, so he's going to be their next head coach, and I think that's a home run hit for the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh has proven that he can win in the NFL. He did that with the 49ers. In 2011, he took over 49ers team that was terrible the year prior and brought him to the NFC Championship game in his first season. And the Chargers have a great team. They were just ridden with injuries and bad coaching and bad coaches. So, that's it. That's my list for the top 5 most disappointing teams of 2023. I'll show you them again. Jets, Seahawks, Jaguars, Bengals, Chargers. An honorable mention, I was considering putting the Eagles on this list, but I didn't because they still made the playoffs. The reason why is because they started 10-1 and they ended up finishing 11-6 and then losing in the wild card. But they're an honorable mention in my opinion. So that is my top 5 most disappointing teams of 2023. Teams that I think will be better next year. I think the Chargers will definitely be better, and the Jets. The Seahawks, I'm not sure because they fired their head coach. We still don't even know who the Seahawks head coach is as I'm making this video. Jaguars and Bengals, I think, will be around the same area, but we'll see how it goes next season. And yeah, that's it.